this year on evacuation. My name is Jess Moore. I am the Wildland Project Coordinator for Evergreen Fire Rescue. If you've all gotten an agenda, I want you to just take notes. We're going to go through some opening statements. I'm going to allow the agency colleagues here to introduce themselves in a second. But you also have on the back of your agenda QR codes for your reference as we go through this. This will be where you can grab stuff later on. Again, this is going to be the heavier topic of evacuation. We know what we're living in and the risks that we have. We work super close with our agency partners through the Clear Creek and Jefferson County Sheriff's offices, as well as Jefferson 911. So right now I'm going to pass it over, and Cammy, if you can turn the mic on the table. We'll start with Brian. If you can introduce yourself and your title.
Good evening, I'm Brian Keating. I'm the Fire Management Officer for Jefferson County out of the Sheriff's Office with the Emergency Services section.
Hi everyone, I'm Todd Bliss. I am the Commander for the Mountain Precinct, and my office is just across the street on adjacent to the DMV.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Gustin, Operations Manager with Jefferson 911.
I'm Seth Markwart, the Captain over Special Services with the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office.
Good evening, I'm Jeremy Jones. I'm the Assistant Fire Chief for Clear Creek Fire Authority. I'm also the Fire Management Officer for Clear Creek Sheriff's Office.
Thank you. So we're going to begin with some opening statements. I'd like to first introduce my Fire Chief, Mike Weege.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. We really appreciate the great turnout. This is a difficult topic, and we want to have a good conversation through the night about it. I'd also like to thank our partners in Jefferson County and Clear Creek County, JeffCom, and our response partners that are out sitting amongst you. We couldn't do this by ourselves. We work very hard together on any major incident, so I appreciate the willingness to join us here tonight. Evergreen Fire Rescue really began widening our scope from just fire attack in the late 90s and into the early 2000s, with 2007 really getting our first community wildfire protection plan completed. Having that plan, it included an emphasis on risk reduction through defensible space and home hardening, along with a more recent revision of our CWPP. Evergreen Fire Rescue has added a fuels reduction team, home property assessment program, additional personnel to manage community education in our ambassador program, which started back in 2013 as our Community Wildfire Protection and Implementation Plan. I think people got tired of saying all of that, so Ambassador Program works much better. I can't thank our ambassadors enough. All of you in the room, if you could raise your hand for us. The work you all do is incredible, and we couldn't do this without you, so thank you. We are adding another position this year to our Wildland Division. We're hiring a Wildland Division Chief. We're in the process of interviewing right now, so another body to help Jess and help the whole program out as we continue to grow that. The questions we are continually being asked has to do with evacuation, which is the topic for tonight. What is my evacuation route? What is the plan? Who is responsible? Tonight we hope to have an honest conversation about evacuation and the realities of living in the wildland urban interface. The truth is, we're all responsible. It doesn't fall fully on the fire department, it doesn't fall fully on Jefferson County Sheriff's Office or Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office, Clear Creek Fire Authority. Each property owner and business shares a responsibility in this difficult topic. EFR will continue to expand our ability to fight fires and to educate our community on the mitigation of properties, the emergency notification system, and neighborhood and family pre-planning. We absolutely need community members to do their part by participating in these programs and getting out there and getting the work done. I would like to thank our partners, as I have said, who's joined us on the stage tonight, and who would follow me is Sheriff Marinelli, who will say a few words, followed by Undersheriff Brown from Evergreen Fire.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Reggie Marinelli, your sheriff for Jefferson County, and I am so happy to be here. I love coming up here because this community has such a passion that we love, that you partake in these types of town hall meetings and that you're here to help us, help you. And so I'm happy to be here and to speak to you about the role the Sheriff's Office plays in managing and cooperating with your partners with regards to evacuations for a wildfire. I'm also here with other staff from my office, including Undersheriff Scott Eddy, sitting up front here, my commander for the emergency service section, Mike Rubenstein. I don't know where Mike went. He's way back there. And some of his staff, which you will hear more from, as well as Del Kleinschmidt, who's my patrol division chief, and his staff, who play an instrumental role in facilitating evacuation operations. Real quick, I also want to acknowledge that the citizens are our most important people here tonight, but we also have a couple of elected officials that I would like to make sure that you guys acknowledge, and we thank them for their support, constant support. And so with that, I'd like to say that Representative Tammy Story's in the audience tonight. And so is Jefferson County Commissioner Leslie Dahlkamper. And I apologize if there's anybody else that I didn't catch. And right now this light is really bright and I can't see. So there are a few key items I would like to emphasize with you all in how my office responds to and facilitates safe, timely, and effective operations during a wildfire or all hazards evacuation event. Life and safety are always our #1 priority. Depending on the severity and complexity of the event, the scale of our response may vary, but it will always be in tune with protecting life and safety of the public and our first responders. While the Sheriff's Office has primary responsibility and will take the lead on evacuation-related operations, we work collaboratively with our partners, such as Evergreen Fire and Rescue, and ensure the most effective and efficient operations possible. We have meetings nonstop with all of our partners, and so we work very well together, but again, we need your help with that. Beyond the logistics of evacuating the public from the threat of a wildfire, our emergency services section is always working behind the scenes to plan for and make accommodations for secondary impacts from the evacuation. This may include setting up emergency shelters, food, facilitating large and small animal centers, and overall coordination with the emergency support functions through the Emergency Operations Center to determine the impacts and needs from a wildfire evacuation. These details go from big to small. So you can imagine when we're talking about this and discussing this, things are thought about as if when you leave your house, if you didn't get what you needed to get your phone charged, when we get you to the evacuation center, we're going to help provide that for you. Phones, so that if you don't have a phone with you, we're going to make sure that you have everything you need at that evacuation center to get you capable of making sure that your loved ones know you're okay, and you can start making those phone calls and plans for what is currently happening at your home or place of business up here. The Sheriff's Office also provides support to the fire protection districts, or can take command of an incident if it exceeds the capability of the local fire protection district. This is a decision that is made collectively with all agencies involved and also coordinated with the State Department of Fire Prevention and Control, especially if conditions support continued fire growth, which may require state agency support. More than anything, and something you will hear from many presenters tonight, I want to stress the importance of your individual responsibilities as it relates to being wildfire aware and ready to act. Wildfires happen without advance notice. We don't have that liberty like they do when a hurricane's coming or a tornado, where you can turn on the news and know hours, sometimes days in advance. Wildfires do not give us that. They don't accommodate that for us. So every wildfire is also unique in where it is located, where it is moving, how fast it is moving, and what values may be threatened. Because of this, the Sheriff's Office cannot fully anticipate nor plan for each and every potential situation. What we do, however, is ensure that we have processes in place that will ensure the best coordinated response to protect the life and property of the citizens of Jefferson County. This includes leveraging every resource at my disposal at any time of an incident, reviewing and updating emergency response plans regularly, and conducting training exercises for various scenarios to ensure our first responders are ready. What I am asking for your help with this is to do your part, to also plan ahead. Be prepared to act if a wildfire threatens you or your community. You will be presented with a lot of information this evening and be provided with resources that can assist you in better preparing for and be in good position to do your part if an evacuation notice goes out. Review the information provided to you tonight. Be familiar with your surroundings. Be signed up for this lookout alert notification system, and have a plan in place ahead of time so that you don't have to figure this all out when you are given the notice to evacuate. My office has prepared a one-page summary document which communicates these messages and also contains links to many of the tools we recommend to help you be better prepared for a wildfire event, which you can get at the table in the entrance back there with the other documentations that are here for your takings tonight. Is this a heavy topic? Yes, it's a very heavy topic. But I want to make sure that you guys know that when it's time for the question and answer session, there are no silly questions. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Step up, ask them, get the answer, because you probably are not the only person in the room that are wondering the answers to that question. So don't be afraid to come forward and ask them. I want to thank you all for coming tonight, for your interest in this important topic, and for the invitation to the Sheriff's Office to speak with you tonight. I also want to thank Evergreen Fire Rescue, under the leadership of Chief Mike Weege, and his staff for putting together these public forums, as I view them both as an important opportunity to help educate citizens on how the county and local agencies work together, but also as a forum for us to hear your concerns and what we can do to better improve our response capabilities. My staff and I will be here all evening and available to talk after the presentation. If you have any additional questions following the presentation and discussions, please approach us and ask those. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Undersheriff Matt Brown with the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office. I'd like to echo some of the remarks that the Sheriff made. With the new Sheriff, he apologizes he couldn't make it here tonight. Matt Harris, he had a scheduling conflict. One thing that I can say is that the partnership that we have with Evergreen and Clear Creek, I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 24 years, and one of the key things that's always stayed the same is how serious we take wildland fires. And to the point where I started to the point where we're at, the collaboration has always been really good. It's one of the meetings that's most well attended in our county. We have a lot of collaboration. We've done tabletop exercises. We know how serious this is to the residents, but we're really lucky to have the residents that we do, both in Evergreen and in Clear Creek, because without you and your notifications, a lot of these fires could have got out of hand. So, like the Sheriff said, we really encourage you to ask any questions that you have. I think that's really important. We've had small fires where we were really fortunate, and I've been on some large-scale fires where it really could have got out of hand. So anything that we have that we can answer for you tonight, we'd be happy to come out and answer those questions. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, both sheriffs and chief, for your opening statements. What we're going to move into now, as you can tell, there are a lot of agency personnel here. I would like all of our partners that are in the audience to stand, or raise your hands if you don't want to stand. But I want you to recognize, all of you raise your hands or stand. I want everyone to recognize that as agencies, we all work together. Now, a big part of what we're going to be discussing, again, we know that you're here because you want to know what we as agency personnel are going to be doing for you during evacuations. But first, we have to recognize the biggest partner in the room, and Chief Reggie alluded to it, the biggest partner in the room are you, each and every one of you. Your homes, your properties, and your lives, that's important. And y'all play a role in everything we do. We can't do our jobs if you don't do your jobs for us. So what we're gonna run through here is, how did we even get here? We got here because we suppressed fire for the past 120 plus years, and our forests are unhealthy. Our forests are sick. And on top of our forest being sick and unhealthy, we then built homes right into the middle of it. Our homes are fuel. Our homes are just as dangerous when not treated properly. Oh, there's a slow slide there. You can tell just that's fire suppression. The forest is unhealthy and overgrown because fire hasn't been allowed to do its job. We live in an environment that was designed to burn. Fire is a natural occurring regimen in these forests to keep them healthy. We took that out of the equation. And we all made the choice to move here, to live here, to build our houses in this. We have a mixed conifer forest predominantly with meadows intermixed. But fire is natural here, and that's something we have to remember. Sheriff Marinelli spoke to it, just like hurricanes. If you live in Florida, you build out your home environment to withstand hurricanes. We have chosen to live in an environment where fire is natural and expected, so we need to build out our home environment to withstand fire, just like if we lived in Florida and had to put storm shutters and build up on stilts. We have natural challenges that we have inherent in our environment, things that we cannot change. The reality is the climate is changing, and thus it is changing the types of fire that we are seeing. I started in this over 18 years ago. Fire is different. It moves different. It started differently. The red flag warnings have increased annually. The Marshall Fire happened on a day that wasn't even a red flag day because the humidity was technically high enough. Things are not normal in our climate and our environment. Challenges that we can't change include the topography, the amount of fuel loading thanks to that fire suppression. Our roadways, thanks to the topography, our roads can only go in certain areas, and because of our build out with our homes, there are roads that cannot be widened. Think of Brook Forest. If you're familiar with Brook Forest, you can't widen it without bulldozing somebody's house. We have multiple roads within our community that you drive around people's houses. I can't widen that road. Our utilities, our power, our cell, I mean, think about from the time you left your house and the time you got here tonight. Did you have cell service the entire way? Most of us don't, unless you live in Bergen. Then you're golden all the way through with your cell service. But our power utilities, like, we can't bury them. You know, most of us are in heavy rock regions. Our power utilities are always going to be a vulnerability. I commend Excel and CORE for the amount of infrastructure work that they're doing to upgrade it, the partnerships that they're having with us to do line clearance and mitigation work on our roadside projects. So those are challenges, though. We got to have power, and our power is tricky. Wind events, we lose power. That's a challenge that we can't change. Limited resources. We are in a rural area. We do not live in Denver Metro. I think we can all agree we've chosen that very specifically, to not live in Denver Metro. And that comes with the reality that we have limited resources. We are a volunteer fire department. We have limited resources. We're fortunate. We have Denver Metro, half an hour away. But those initial attack moments, it's going to be pretty lonely at first. Another challenge that we'll face is that time to evacuate. And the sheriff also spoke to this a little bit. We never know when an event kicks off. You don't know. Folks that know me know that I'm originally out of Lake Tahoe, and my first fire was the Angora fire in 2007. There was no time. No time. There were winds very similar to the Marshall Fire Day, similar to, 3-4 weeks ago up here. There was zero time to evacuate. Everyone just ran for it. Okay? 14 years later, when the Caldor fire moved through, there was 10 days to evacuate. Everyone knew it was coming because it was a lumbering behemoth of a fire moving up the west slope of the Sierras. We can't determine that. We cannot determine ahead of time what kind of fire we're dealing with. So we don't know how much time we will have to evacuate. That's where things that you do are so utterly important to this great equation. What can we control? Pictures are loading very slow. There is a three-legged stool there in the middle of that. So, the three-legged stool effect, that's what, we talk about. When I first got into this, I was under prevention, and what we talk about is prevention. Well, as fire has evolved, it turned into reducing risk reduction, because we learned, unfortunately, with some very hard lessons that at the end of the day, we weren't preventing fire, but we could reduce our risk to fire. And so how do we do that? We do that through defensible space, home hardening, and fuel breaks. What we know works, what the science has proven, is that if we can change fire's behavior as it moves into a community, we can get people out, we can reduce the risk to life, property, overall safety. All right, so fuel breaks, one of those legs of the three-legged stool. We know that a healthy forest is a fire-resilient forest. Again, our forests are designed to have fire in them. That is how our forests were managed naturally on their own. And so we know that if we create these fuel breaks with not only fire mitigation in mind, but wildlife and forest health in mind, we are able to change the way fire moves in and around our community. So that if we have a major fire that starts out west on the Forest Service property and it starts moving towards our community, when it gets to Three Sisters, it's going to drop to the ground because we've mitigated. We've recreated what our forest should have looked like had we allowed fire to do its job all these years. And the reality of that is that if a fire's on the ground, we can fight it. If it's racing through a canopy, we can't. So we've got to get fire on the ground. We have to change its behavior. As it moves closer to our properties, the key is to make sure that we do our due diligence on our properties. Colorado is very proud of being property owner strong. That property is your property, and that property is your responsibility to help keep that fire on the ground as it moves through our community. As it's moving towards your property, your structure, we need to change its behavior. That also includes embers. Y'all heard, folks that have heard me speak before know I always describe it. If you think about our snowstorms, you light all those snowflakes on fire, that's what's raining down on your house ahead of a wildfire. What are all those little embers landing in? What's their potential to ignite something around your structure? The science on the 3 zones of defensible space, that's been around for 20 years. The science is proven and it works. The design behind those 3 zones and home hardening are to help your home stand alone without an engine in your driveway. The science behind that is so that that fire can move past your house with no help. Again, home hardening, back here. This is just another slide to kind of give you an idea as you look that you're changing that fire behavior by modifying the fuels as they come closer to your structure. Again, that ember wash is the biggest threat to all of our homes. That is the most likely way your house will ignite in a wildland fire. Here, this is a research project that Dr. Steve Quarles did. And the left side of the structure, shake siding, wood mulch, open eaves, unscreened vents, and it sits on a turntable with ember machines. The right side of the house shows good home hardening, and that 0 to 5 foot zone is completely non-combustible. With that, blasted by embers, you can see what happens. With this, and I'm kind of keeping my segment here a little bit shorter than some of you that have seen my regular presentations. How do you know what you need to do? Evergreen Fire has a couple of different programs to help assist homeowners to get this information and understand what they need to do specifically on their properties. We have 2 mitigation specialists that are here tonight with their iPads if you want to sign up for our free home assessments, where they're going to go out and personally walk your property with you, talk about the vegetation, the defensible space, the home hardening, the work that you can do to help reduce your risk. In addition to that, as you get going, we have our curbside chipping program. And again, just a quick reminder, you're welcome to sign up with me and carry for home assessments today, tonight, but you also have QR codes on the back of your agenda. You can sign up for home assessments here. You can also sign up for our curbside chipping program. If you do your work, we can come out, chip it up. It's a 125 for 5 piles, a 5 by 5 by 5, and we'll haul it for you. In addition to defensible space, home hardening, and fuel breaks, there's kind of this gray zone of roadside mitigation. As you know, the heavier topic that we're primarily here for tonight is about that evacuation, and we know that roadside mitigation is also part of that conversation. We have begun through Evergreen Fire to start work on multiple roadsides throughout the fire district. These are roadsides that are targeted through our Community Wildfire Protection Plan. We are actually also in the process of updating that CWPP right now. And with these roads, we are looking to reduce the fuel adjacent to the roadways. Again, it's a challenge though, because in some cases, your home is actually the fuel. Now, in addition to the work that we can do, one of the things that is in certain areas where we have a little bit denser population of homes, oftentimes if you, the homeowner, the property owner, do your defensible space, that roadside mitigation gets done. If your house is within 100 to 150 feet of the roadway, you doing your due diligence checks the box for us to get that roadside mitigation done. So some of the roadside mitigation work, there is always, defensible space, roadside mitigation. There is always the fear factor of, oh, it's going to be a clear cut. It absolutely is not. A healthy forest has trees, so we keep the trees, but we mitigate them to a place of where they should have been had fire done its job. Again, we're looking to recreate a healthy forest. A healthy forest is a fire-resilient forest, and that will help us in the event of any wildland fire. So you can see here on that left side, you can see just how dense and heavy the vegetation is. And again, we came through, our crew cleaned up this work. Again, plenty of vegetation left. We can work with the property owners on some of our specific projects. If they have, I don't want to see my neighbor's kitchen window, all right, we'll leave that tree and then we'll mitigate around it. There are options. Forestry can be incredibly subjective. Now, as far as evacuation preparation, you do the work around your property, you get all of that done, you do your home hardening. As agencies, we're working to create those fuel breaks, those halos around our communities. But what happens when it actually comes time to go? Are you signed up for Lookout Alert? There are QR code cards out on the front. Hopefully everyone picked one up, and you have signed up for Lookout Alert. Lookout Alert is now valid for both Clear Creek and Jefferson County. If you were Clear Creek and you were code red, double check that all your information transferred with Lookout Alert as that transition happened in February, I believe it was. The things to be aware of: following news and social media. Again, following the links on the QR codes on the back of the agenda, the Evergreen Fire Wildland Division page will take you to links. There are also a ton of links through Rotary Wildfire Ready. Again, that QR code is also on the bottom of the agenda, on the back of the agenda. Being aware of red flag days. Now I've got that asterisk there because, again, talking about situational awareness. Remember, Marshall Fire was not a red flag day. Okay, so even if it's not a red flag day, but the flag poles are bending, you know that you need to have that little heightened awareness of the situation. Evacuation checklist, making sure you go through that process with your family, with everyone in your home. Packing your go bag, knowing what you need in your go bag, and staying on top of that. Evacuation planning, knowing where you're going to go, what you're going to do, what are your options, knowing the routes in and out of your homes. A lot of us maybe only have one way out. That's going to be an easy choice. But during Elephant View, there was individuals that lived up at the end of Brook Forest, and because they saw everyone turn left to come towards Evergreen on Brook Forest, they just turned and got in line instead of going right and popping over Shadow Mountain. Situational awareness, knowing where the fire was. They could have popped over Shadow Mountain, been sitting at the Starbucks in Conifer. Instead, they got in traffic on Brook Forest. Know your routes. Situational awareness, being aware of what's going on. I strongly tell everyone, get yourself signed up for Lookout Alert. But we already discussed what's one of our challenges, our cell phones. On a good day, these are not reliable. I'm not putting my life on the line for it on a bad day. If you smell smoke, if you see smoke, get out, leave. Get out early. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, at some point, it has to be a little bit primal. Fire, bad, go the other way. Right? Like, it's a pretty basic human concept. Get out early. There were far too many people that we've done inspections on within a 1.5 to 3 mile radius of Elephant View, which is well within that ember wash zone. Embers will travel 1.5 to 2 miles easily. And there were plenty of people that when we asked them what they did with Elephant View, they said they sat on their deck and they watched the air show. You just became my problem. Because when it goes sideways and you try to get out then, that's when we can't do our jobs because we've got to fight to save your life. So that's where we need you to have that situational awareness. If you see smoke, you smell smoke, if you no longer feel comfortable, don't wait for your cell phone to tell you to leave. Get out early. With all of the evacuation stuff, the biggest thing I can recommend is that you practice. Set a timer for yourself. Think about how long does it actually take you to round up your animals, your kids, to get your go bag, to close all your windows, to shut everything down and get out. I promise it will always be a lot longer than you think it is. So practice. You have to practice. So again, I already mentioned, Rotary Wildfire Ready is a wonderful partner that we have for educational material and outreach. Their go-bag information, their checklist information, again, on the back of your agenda is their website as well as their app, and that QR code will help you download their app. Their information is what we share and what we work off of. They do a phenomenal job of it, and we're happy to share it. Again, evacuation planning, there are a lot of layers to the things that we ask of homeowners when it comes to an evacuation. I said it before at the beginning, I'm keeping my stuff a little bit shorter because I know that we're here to talk to the agency personnel. We're going to do an evacuation planning workshop. Okay, so all of the things that I talked about specific to evacuation, the checklist, the go bags, when you see smoke, call 911. How do you know when you call 911, how do you know where to tell them it's at? Things like that. That's what we're going to cover June 23rd. Okay, that date is also on your agenda, middle bottom. I want to stress again before I pass this on to Brian, we need you to do your part. You are just as much of an agency partner in this as the sheriff, as the fire, as JeffCom, as our emergency managers. We absolutely have to have you do your work. That will reduce the risk during an evacuation. Because if our homes are not mitigated, if our homes, defensible space and home hardening is not done, if you have not done your due diligence, if you have not taken care of your evacuation planning so that you know how to get in line and be efficient, that's going to cause us trouble in trying to put the fire out and in trying to help everyone get out safely. Implementing defensible space and home hardening, signing up for lookout alert notifications, creating that evacuation plan. Ultimately, it's going to be get out early. So as we transition into the deeper conversation with our agency partners, again, I want to thank everyone for coming. Brian Keating, the Fire Management Officer with Jefferson County, is going to step up now, give his presentation, and then we're going to open it up for questions. Thank you.
Well, good evening again. Appreciate the presentation, Jess, and all the great information and stressing the importance of what you guys can do to help us do our jobs better and protect the citizens and property of Jefferson County. So as we get into this, a couple of things I want to point out. This presentation about evacuations from an agency perspective is still kind of a high-level presentation. I'm going to focus on the process more than anything. We're not going to get into the weeds about specific roads or intersections and things like that. We're just trying to convey to you all about how we work collaboratively together. You'll hear me reiterate some points about the importance of you guys doing your part, being aware. I also want to point out that since I am with Jefferson County, this presentation may look a little skewed towards Jefferson County with the photos and things like that, but Clear Creek Sheriff's Office is a partner. They reviewed this presentation. They are on board with the process that we're presenting to you guys, and we work collaboratively with them and with all our other neighbors throughout the county. So this really, for the community of Evergreen up here, this is really coming from both Sheriff's Office perspective. I also want to point out, we've heard every incident is unique. So being able to give you specifics tonight on how things might occur or how things are going to play out is really impossible for us to do. We are constantly assessing the situation as it occurs and making decisions in a collaborative manner that is going to be the most efficient and effective way to react to that incident and make sure that we're protecting folks. So we'll move into it. So as Jess led into, I see smoke. What happens now? So the first thing is, the fire's going to get reported, right? It may be you as a citizen that's first calling in the smoke. It may be one of the sheriff's deputies that's out on patrol that sees it and calls it in. It may be the fire department that's doing patrols or that's out working in the woods that calls it in as well. So that's obviously the first step in this process, is creating that awareness. And whichever agency or individual that's doing that, the importance of calling JEFCON, calling 911 to make sure that that awareness is out there is critical to a timely response. So I can't stress enough for you guys as individuals, if you see smoke, don't assume necessarily that somebody else is already called that in. Especially if you live further up in the country or the backwoods, it's critical for us to have that awareness so that we can start the processes. So once 911 is aware of that, they're going to start the formal notifications. They're going to contact the sheriff's office. They're going to contact the fire protection district, Evergreen Fire Rescue, and make sure that they have that awareness and that they're starting to get their response put together. At the same time, at least for Jefferson County, the emergency services section, our duty officer is going to get a call and say, hey, we've got a smoke report, this is where it's at. That duty officer is going to collect information. They're going to reach out to me as your fire management officer, and then I will start working with the other staff in the sheriff's office to make sure we've got the right folks involved, and we will also be en route up to the incident so that we can provide support to Chief Weege and the rest of his staff to make sure that they're fully supported in what their needs are. For a fire that occurs up in this area, more often than not, we're also immediately, I'm going to be contacting the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control, the DFPC. As you heard earlier, they are an important partner in all this, especially as an incident increases in complexity and impacts. They become a partner not only in terms of being able to mobilize resources to help us on the response side, but also to get things like air resources and provide other support throughout the systems that will make sure we're throwing everything that we can at it. You know, really our goal right now is to hit it hard and hit it fast. We want to keep fires, wildfires, we want to keep them as small as possible, as least impactful as possible, and so we engage with all our partners to make sure we've got that support mechanism. More often than not, the local fire department or a sheriff's deputy is going to be the first one on scene. Immediately, they're going to start to do a size up of the situation. They're going to get together, especially in an area like here where we know evacuations could be part of the response. And they're going to talk about tactics and what needs to go into that decision matrix to ensure that we've got an effective response. As part of that, we're going to identify what the values at risk are. For most of you, that's going to be your homes and obviously life. Life first is always our dictating factor out there. But it may also be infrastructure or resources. Throughout Jefferson County, throughout much of Colorado, watershed values are huge, right? That's one of the values. So when we're assessing what values at risk, we're looking at a broad spectrum that's out there, and that's going to help dictate what kind of response and what kind of resources we need to be successful. As part of that, we're also going to go through some worksheets and start to work through what is the complexity of the incident. In fire management, we've got a type 5, a type 4, type 3, type 2, type 1. Now they're calling it a critical incident management team, which kind of covers the type 1 and type 2, the highest level complexities out there. But it's important for us to understand what that complexity level is to ensure that we've got the right number of personnel and the qualified personnel. All of us that work in wildfire management spent years and years working through different qualifications and getting training and working through task books before we're certified to be able to manage an incident. So if we have a fire, we need to know what the complexity level is so that we can also start putting in resource orders to say, hey, we need an incident commander that's a type 3 qualified individual versus a type 5, which would be at the lower end of the spectrum. As part of this whole process, we're also the fire department and the sheriff's office and other responding agencies are establishing an incident command post, an ICP. And that's going to be the central location where the key decision makers and commanders are going to be parked to work collaboratively together to make those decisions, to get things operational and moving as they need to. So again, working together and coordinating. As part of that, we're also talking about communications. And it's not only communications in terms of working with JeffCom, but it's communications. In most cases, we're going to have multiple agencies responding to an incident. And so again, for the safety of our first responders, we need to make sure everybody can talk with one another. So we're establishing a common communication structure there. And on the side part of that is also going to be communications, working with our public information officers, both with the local fire protection districts and with the sheriff's offices, so they can start to gather the intel and prepare their messages that they're going to push out on social media to help inform you guys. While all this is going, concurrently, we are also ordering resources. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of mutual aid agreements and other cooperative efforts that are preloaded in the off-season to help facilitate making sure we can get as an effective response from as many agencies as we need to be successful. Okay, so as part of that values at risk, in this case we're going to run through tonight a scenario where we say evacuations are needed. That's the focus of the forum here tonight. So what happens when we make that determination that we need to evacuate people? So you've got our sheriff deputies who are normally going to be from the sheriff's office, probably the first ones out on scene, or a sergeant. They'll call in a patrol commander most likely. They will get with the fire incident commander at that incident command post, that ICP. They will establish those relationships so they can start determining what the level of the threat is. And from there, they can decide, do we need to put an area under a pre-evacuation order, an evacuation order, or in some cases, we use the nomenclature shelter in place. And so, shelter in place does apply to a wildfire incident, but I want to reiterate to all of you that that is our last resort, right? As Jess said, if you're uncomfortable or if you've gotten a notification, if you see smoke, smell smoke, you always want to get out. That's the first thing, that's the safest option. But in some cases, because these fires can evolve rapidly, you may be cut off, and shelter in place may be what we need to do. Shelter in place is also an important concept for us because when we talk about going through evacuations, you heard Sheriff Marinelli talk about it earlier, all hazard. Both the sheriff's office are responsible for all hazard incidents. So you could think about an active shooter event or a hazmat event. Shelter in place may be a more appropriate nomenclature or notification that you receive in those types of incidents versus a pre-evacuation or an evacuation order, which would be more applicable to a wildfire event. Once we make that determination, the sheriff deputies or the patrol commander, they're going to be getting intel from the fire folks, and they're going to be looking and anticipating where the fire is moving and determining what the extent of that evacuation area needs to be. So we've got tools in our toolbox that we draw from. In some cases, we've already got pre-identified or predetermined evacuation zones that are mapped out, that JeffCom has already sitting at their desk. So if we pull the trigger, they can use their systems to do a notification in that pre-identified area. We might do a point-based mapping exercise. So the deputy may call 911, and in their communications they may say from this road intersection to this road intersection to this road intersection, draw a box, and then have the system push out notifications to all the addresses and contacts and folks that are signed up at Lookout Alert within that box to say you're under a pre-evac or an evacuation order. So that's more of a dynamic feature. There's also things that we're starting to discuss, like the community planning units, the ambassadors that are out here that represent folks in some of these community planning units that exist within the Evergreen Fire Rescue CWPP. Those are pre-identified areas, so maybe that's a good place to, or a good opportunity to push out an evacuation notice to, because most likely you guys as citizens of the community up here are engaged with your community ambassadors, and you know what planning unit you're in, so you're already familiar with that terminology. It may mean in those instances that we may over-evacuate or over-pre-evacuate an area, but I would much rather do that than the opposite, obviously. So there's a number of different ways we look at what's the extent of those evacuation areas. So ultimately, the sheriff's office, whether it's Jefferson County or whether it's Liberty, they take the lead on evacuations. They are responsible for making those decisions and for making sure that the operations play out the way they need to. So again, you've got your deputies, your patrol commanders. They're going to work with 911 to start that notification process. They've identified the area. Now they're pulling the trigger, and those notifications are going out. They're going to order whatever resources they need to be successful. If it's a big evacuation area, it's going to be all hands on deck. Also, as Sheriff Marinelli said, she's going to leverage every resource at her disposal to get that underway, and that includes working with our partners. If it's a fire within Jefferson County proper, we're going to be calling Clear Creek to see if they've got resources that can help us in those situations and vice versa. At the same time, I'm responding as the FMO or someone else from emergency services. If we know evacuations are part of the matrix for an incident, for a wildfire incident, we are immediately calling our emergency managers in the respective counties and letting them know that they need to stand up the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC, to help provide some of that other support that Sheriff Marinelli also spoke to about, shelters, food, large animal shelters, and things like that. So the EOC is going to start, is going to get activated so that they can start pulling in the resources they need to be able to be effective in their response. They're going to coordinate with all responding agencies based on the functions. They're going to also help us in facilitating order of additional resources, whether it's to help facilitate an evacuation or even resources to help the fire district fight the fire. So they can play a role in doing that, and they're going to be coordinating with JEFCON through all of this. And as I mentioned earlier, our Public Affairs Office is going to be notified, and they're going to be working with the local fire protection district, PIOs, public information officers, to make sure that they are being as effective as they can to get the messages out to you. So it's not just Lookout Alert, that's your official notification system, but as Jess mentioned, having that situational awareness on your part, it's your responsibility to start looking at those social media sites. And when we get into the end of the transition into the question and answer session, I'll talk a little bit about what some of those platforms may be that we're asking you guys to look at. So the evacuation notice process, I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer with JEFCON, and she's going to kind of talk through what they do as far as pushing out those notifications.
Thank you, Brian. You can go to the next. Okay, so JEFCON 911 is going to be the lead for your notifications for both Clear Creek and Jefferson County. We do use Lookout Alert. It's an emergency notification system that is capable of alerts via text, email, voice. We also go through the Lookout Alert app, and it is also capable of language translation. When we send out notifications, they go through all 5 of those platforms every single time.
We had a technical glitch, so photos as you mentioned. So there'll be a rush of photos at the end of this, unfortunately.
Once an alert is sent, the entire communication center has access to that information, not just the person who sent it. So if you need information, you can call in, and anybody that you speak to can give it to you. We will send updates to the previous notification as anything changes. So for example, if you are sent a pre-evacuation notice, and you haven't left yet, and then we decide to cancel that because the fire changed directions or whatever the case may be, we will send you an update to that notification. That also goes for if you're in a pre-evacuation area and we now need you to evacuate or shelter in place, you will get those updates. When you get those notifications, please read the entire message, as there will be directions for you in there if you have specific directions. As far as what Brian was talking about with the shelter in place, if we have to send that out to you, there are specific directions on what you can and cannot do with the shelter in place, so please just look at the whole message. Also, please be aware that when there is a large incident in either Jefferson or Clear Creek County, the dispatch center is going to be inundated with tasks. So when people are calling in, please know that they're dispatching for the incident, they're providing resources to the deputies, the fire department, EMS, they're taking emergency and non-emergency calls, making notifications, and still handling every other emergency that comes into our center. JeffCom is a regionalized center, and we dispatch for 31 agencies currently, so please just know that we do get busy with big incidents like this. If necessary, please call our non-emergency number for information, and of course, if you feel like you're in a life-threatening situation, call 911. And now you're gonna get all your pictures.
Yep. So let's look out our pictures that you got in the first bullet. Here's some examples of some of the messages that they have pushed out in the past related to wildfire incidents, so you can get an idea of some of the information that goes out with them.
I want to speak to this one specifically. If you look at this bottom box, this is on the right-hand side, the map that you see. If you go to jeffcom911.org, it's our website. We also have an app that you can download to your phone. When we send notifications out, it will pop up under resources for our website and also be available in our app, and that is for the entire county, not just your area. So you will have access to that.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. So I want to touch a little bit more on the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC. So I mentioned in the background things that are occurring. So these are some photos from Jefferson County, from our EOC, from some past incidents that have occurred. You can see one of your county commissioners right here up in the front. So we pull in people that we need in order to support the decisions and get the resources that are needed to not only effectively respond to the incident, but provide the support to you guys as evacuees as you're coming out of the area. So it's a big operation, it's a big center, very complex. Above each of these stations, you can see these little signs. These all represent different departments, and it's everything from roads and bridges to human health services to you name it. Well, every department that you can think of that could play a role is part of the EOC. But it's important to remember, depending on the complexity of the incident and the needs of the incident, this entire EOC is scalable. So we won't pull everybody in if their particular component is not an active player in an incident, but we have that capability to do that. So, as I mentioned, it's part of the normal notification system. It's our process. It's occurring in the background, kind of on a parallel track, just as the fire operations are occurring, just as the evacuation operations are occurring. All of the EOC stuff is occurring all at the same time. For Jefferson County, our emergency service section is the lead with the EOC, and our emergency manager, Nate Whittington, is here. He is your emergency manager for Jefferson County, and he helps facilitate and manage all of this. They are collecting, as you can see, they've got a number of platforms. They're collecting tons of intel that's being fed both directly and indirectly from the incident. And so they're able to make decisions and anticipate some needs, even if it's not coming from the incident commander, because they're this warehouse of information that's coming into them to help inform what they think is going to be an appropriate response. They also work on what's the complexity of that incident and the extent of the needs, and that will affect the scale of their response. And as we've mentioned, everything from shelter to food, animal shelters, public health concerns, all of those things are part of that. And the EOC, just like everything, you think about it from an all hazards aspect. It's not just for wildfire. They are stood up, last week we had that incident on I-70 with the tanker that caught fire and shut down I-70. The EOC started to stand up immediately when that occurred to see what are the needs. There was hazmat involved and other components. So they're dealing with all hazards. And again, as I mentioned, they're going to call in the appropriate decision makers that we need to support the decisions, to get the resources on site to ensure that the citizens of Jefferson County are being fully supported. So evacuation operations, I'm going to turn this over to Patrol Commander Todd Bliss, and he's going to go through kind of what they do.
Okay, I think this is on. All right, thanks, Brian. So I'll try to run us through just a high overview of what the evacuations are going to look like. So the on-site commander, which and you guys can look at me today, will be identified to lead and coordinate those efforts. Brian, you can just kind of blast through these as I go. We're collecting intel. Intel is everything to all the decisions that we're going to be making. We're assessing the situation, the evacuation routes, traffic flow, public people that need assistance. We're going to assess and order additional resources as needed. Our deputies, Colorado State Patrol, Road and Bridge, those are just a few of the partners that we would call in depending on the event and the size. Our actions are going to include establishing roadblocks, traffic control, direct the traffic for the best egress routes depending on the fire activity, conducting an evacuation zone drive-through. We're going to sweep the areas, looking for anybody that maybe didn't know about the notifications, and assist the public as needed. So when we get phone calls from people saying, my mom's still at the house, or there's family at this home, then we know where to target our resources. We often talk, the time is on our side, depending on the situation, but this will be one of those events where it may not be. So, as mentioned previously, you guys are our partners in this. The more you help us, you get out and you get your bag and you're ready to go, and you get out of your neighborhood, that's more resources that I can deploy further up the road to help your neighbors. So again, we're continuously assessing the fire activity and we're coordinating with the incident commander. So when I show up to the incident command post, I'm going to be hip to hip with fire and all of our other partners so that we're communicating all this information to each other and making the decisions as we go.
Great. Thanks, Todd. So the other thing I want to stress is, we're talking about evacuations, and much of the slides have been focused on that thus far, what goes into that decision. But it's important to remember, like I said, you've got fire operations, evacuation operations, EOCs going on. So with all of these events, and as the last bullet on Todd's slide mentioned, they're continuously being evaluated to see what's changing, what the new needs are, where we need to shift focus. In some cases, a fire may become complex, where the impacts to the community may be so significant, and I think you heard Jess talk to it earlier. We may shift focus. We may pull fire personnel away from suppressing the fire and pull them into the evacuation operations. And the incident itself, because life first is what drives our decision making, may be focused entirely on evacuations. So that's part of that continuous assessment, trying to determine where we need to go. We talked about, are those evacuation zones still accurate and relevant? Do we need additional resources? Do we need to pull in fire personnel? Or do we need additional resources to suppress the fire? So again, at that incident command post where all that intel is kind of feeding into, we've got the commanders and the incident commander. They're there together, they're assessing all that intel, and they're making the decision and they're getting the resources that they need. They're also, as the incident is contained and the threat reduced, they're talking to decide, do we need to go from an evacuation down to a pre-evacuation order? Or do we go from a pre-evacuation order to the all clear? So we don't want to impact you guys any longer than we need to, keep you away from your homes any longer than we need to. So that's part of that reassessment of the incident that's continuously occurring. And as part of that, in terms of going back to the communication, JEFCOM is a part of that decision process. So if the decision is made that we're going to pull back on evacuations, or we're going to go from pre-evacuation to evacuation, they're conveying that, the sheriff's office is conveying that to JEFCOM so that they can push out the next alert to help you guys keep informed. I don't know why all the photos come up last, but there you go. So, and then my last slide, I just want to stress that we are a learning organization, all of us. It doesn't matter what agency we are. So whenever we have an incident of significance, which a lot of them are these days, we do an after-action review. We get the agencies that responded together in an environment where we can look through how the operation played out. We can review the data that was associated with that operation to evaluate how things played out. We can talk about what went right and where there's room for improvement. And out of that, we're always going to develop lessons learned so that we can do better the next time. So that's my broad overview on the evacuation. So I appreciate your time.
We can go ahead and bring the lights up. Bring those lights up, bring these down, yeah. We are going to begin to transition to our open question section of this forum. With that, I want to again acknowledge agency partners. Obviously, we have representation from Jefferson 911, Clear Creek, and Jefferson County Sheriffs, the fire districts, both Clear Creek Fire Authority as well as Evergreen Fire. We also have our emergency managers in the audience from both counties, and as well as multiple deputies through various ranks of both sheriff's offices, including animal control. So there's a lot of opportunity. We have representation from U.S. Forest Service here, as well as Jefferson County Open Space, Jefferson Conservation District. And so, we can field a number of questions. One of the things I'm going to let Brian speak to again is a handout that hopefully you were all able to grab as you came in.
Thanks. So one of the handouts was labeled frequently asked questions. So Jess did reach out to the community, to some folks in the community in advance of this forum, and a number of questions were submitted to you guys that we use to help inform both our presentations and how to be prepared to answer any questions that may come up. I do want to let you know there was a large volume of questions, so what we did is we took those questions and we kind of grouped them into similar issues, because as you might imagine, different people ask questions that were of a similar nature. So we kind of grouped questions that were alike, formulated a question out of that, and then provided an answer. So you've got that one document, if you grabbed it, it's 4 pages long. There's 5 questions that kind of came out of that grouping, which hopefully will provide you guys with a lot of information to some of the questions that you had submitted or might anticipate. There were also an additional 5 questions that were kind of specific enough on their own and couldn't be grouped, but were relevant enough that we wanted to provide you some information. So use that document as a resource. Again, it might be a little Jefferson County specific, but conceptually it probably applies to both counties in terms of that response. And then the other document that was available was this one. It came out of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office under the Sheriff's letterhead. And so what this document is, recently we put together just this 1-pager to kind of provide some more information about how we function during an evacuation associated incident. It's got some resources and some tools on there. This will get posted on our website. It's not there yet. The items that are highlighted in blue, those are all hot links, which are also available through some of the links that that Jess mentioned, and that's available on Evergreen Fire Rescue. So please use that as another resource to get a better understanding of how we facilitate evacuations and support the citizens of the county. Thanks.
Okay. All right, so as we begin the question and answer portion, I've got Keenan Prouty, who's one of my mitigation specialists in the back. He has a microphone. So start raising your hands. In the red t-shirt? Yeah.
We have a generator and, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
If we have a generator and we get evacuated, should we be turning that off so that it doesn't pop on? Like, you know, when the electricity goes out, our generator kicks on. But if we're evacuated, should we be shutting it down?
Well, the reality of it is, and I'll speak to this to a certain degree, the reality of it is the gas is going to get shut off, so it's not going to kick on. The gas and power will get shut off. In some,
Not very.
so, and Jake, do you want to take it?
Yeah, the best answer I can give is it depends. So, you know, if you're on a well, a lot of times when we pull in and we park a fire truck in there and we're doing an assessment of your property, we call it triaging. We may need to top off our tank. So if the power's out, the pump's not going to work, so we can't do that. If we get there, like we do with structure fires, we hit a breaker and all of a sudden the lights come back on. We know you have a generator, we'll go turn that off. Our guys are trained, our people are trained to know when we need to turn things off and when not to. Same thing with a propane tank. One of the big hazards with a wildfire is that line between the tank and the house. Those get breached, and that'll burn your house down really quickly. So firefighters will check that and make sure that that's off if you haven't already turned off that tank. So, sorry, I know the depends isn't a great answer, but if you haven't taken an action when we're triaging a house, we will take that action.
And that's one of those things that can also get determined based on the time you have been allocated in order to evacuate. So if you gotta go and you gotta go now, then go. Get out early. If you have time to do that walk around, that's part of your checklist. I gotta turn my propane tank off, and you shut it down. So those are the things that are part of your personal property evacuation planning. Yeah.
One other portion of that is if you are leaving it on, make sure that you're disconnecting yourself from the grid. So if it's only powering those things that are on your property. So whatever breaker that you have that goes to the rest of the grid, make sure that that's disconnected so you're not energizing the lines downrange. So if the power lines go down and we think that they're all turned off, we don't know that you're powering those lines now. We're accessing, they're coming across those lines and they're energized. So make sure if you are leaving it on that you're charging just your area and everything else downrange is not charged.
Okay, can you hear me? This is a question for Jennifer. In Boulder County and Larimer County, when people are given an evacuation notice, they see a map where the fire is and they see the recommended evacuation routes. Is that going to be added to Lookout Alert soon?
As of right now, we just have the notification areas on our map. They are specific with the streets in there, but we do not have location of the fire in there.
Is that planned? Can you do that? Is that a future?
Not that I'm aware of, but it's a great idea to take back to the agency.
Okay, and the other thing, can you let people here know how many people have signed up for Lookout Alert? I hear it's like in 20% of people.
No, 15%.
15%? So, yeah. And so is the WEA system going to be used in a wildfire emergency, which is the wireless emergency alert, to get the word out to people?
We can if we need to. We can use that if we need to, and we kind of base that. Kevin, I'll let you answer a little bit more of that.
Yes, we have the wireless emergency authority. We do access that
along with the iPod portion of that. But remember, if your cell phone or that power line that's been connected to that cell phone, that's part of that reason. If you have a landline and you're still part of that generation that has a sturdy piece of communication, I applaud you for that. Because we will access that 911 line into the residence for that notification. But yes, we do have access to both of those and we do use those. Just one more thing.
For the Clear Creek residents with our recent transition through Jefferson, there was a lot of...
Can you please use the mic for those in the back?
Oh, it's on.
There you go.
For the Clear Creek residents, with our recent transition to Jefferson, there was a lot of assumption that if you were signed up for the code red, you would automatically be signed up to the lookout alert, this like flawless transition. That's not the case. You need to still sign up for the lookout alert system, even if you were previously signed up for the code red.
There's two terms that I've come across in public documents over the last 5 years. I'd like you to address both terms. Shelter in place, non-survivable road. Thank you.
So shelter in place, I touched on it a little bit during my presentation, right? So from a fire perspective, that should be your last resort, right? Pre-evacuation or evacuating on your own should always be the first option, having that situational awareness. Evacuating because you've been told to is the second option, to get out. If you're evacuating, if you're driving your vehicle and you get cut off because there's down power lines or down rope trees in the road and you have no alternative to get out, then you're going to be better off going back to your structure and sheltering in place than staying in your car and getting trapped in your car. So that's where shelter in place is one of those times where it could be applicable during a wildfire event. And shelter in place, get back to your resident and find the most defensible portion of your resident. Being in your garage with all your gas cans and other flammable liquids obviously is not the best place to be. And if you do shelter in place, I would stress more than anything to notify, to call 911 or the non-emergency number and make them aware of your situation. That will get conveyed to the first responders, whether it's fire or whether it's law enforcement, and then once they have that awareness, if they are able to get to you, they will get to you. If it means opening up a road because it's safe to do so, we will work on doing that so that we can escort you out of the area safely. So both sheltering in place to protect yourself and notifying through emergency services so we have that awareness is a critical component. In terms of non-survivable roads, so we're not really talking about survivable, non-survivable roads anymore. We're evaluating evacuation corridors, right? So you heard Jess talking about Evergreen Fire Rescue is in the process of updating their CWPP. We are also updating our CWPP for the county as a whole, and we anticipate to have that final CWPP in place by this fall. As part of that exercise, we are doing analysis on evacuation routes throughout the county. We're looking at the different classifications of the road systems, whether it's a major highway, a secondary highway, a feeder route, things like that. We are modeling that against fire behavior, what the fuels are in the area, what the expected fire behavior could be, and whether or not that evacuation route is safe for egress or not. And those areas that pop up as not being safe, we're identifying those as priority areas for mitigation work. So that's going to be part of our county CWPP and how we're going to prioritize our investments moving forward. That overlays really well with what the communities are doing, whether it's Evergreen or Elk Creek or even Arvada. They are looking at a much finer scale of their evacuation or their road corridors, which of those are evacuation routes and which ones are safe as is and which ones need some mitigation work. to be safer. So that's part of the work that the county's doing is our CWPP update and how we're prioritizing the investments that we make moving forward. It's a Community Wildfire Protection Plan. So, and just so you all know, there's different scales of that. So pretty much every fire district throughout Jefferson County has their own CWPP. It's at a very fine scale. They're working very closely with the residents that live within their fire protection district, identifying their values and incorporating mitigation actions into that. Then we have a county level CWPP. So it serves kind of at that 30,000 foot level, more of an umbrella document, and talks about broader mitigation, broader programs that are needed to both support the fire protection districts in the work that they're doing and what they've prioritized as needing investment, as well as where there's gaps between the fire protection districts that maybe the county needs to step up and try and connect those dots. So there's two different scales of it.
My question is for Jennifer. You had the slide up there that had the map, and then you said there was also an app. Is that the Lookout Alert app that you were talking about, or a separate app?
It's actually an app for JEFCOM 911. And if you want to see me after this, I can get you a QR code for that app that you can download on your phone. We also have the Lookout Alert QR codes out on the tables.
I live off Brook Forest, and they did a lot of fire mitigation along Brook Forest last summer, but now there are these giant mounds of brush all along the road. Are those going to be cleaned up, or are they not an evacuation hazard? I don't know.
So the area of Brook Forest that you're speaking to is part of Cub Creek, the Denver Mountain Parks, Cub Creek area. That is a cooperative project through the Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Program, as well as Denver Mountain Parks and Evergreen Fire Rescue. The Mile High Youth Corps crews are the ones doing that work. It is a multi-phased project, so it's multiple years, multiple summers that's going to happen. You're going to start seeing burn piles pop up in a number of areas around the district. When we go through and we do these projects, those burn piles that get created have to cure. Because when we go to burn them, it's a very arduous process of creating what's called a burn plan. And that burn plan is also taking into account air quality regulations and issues with that. So the drier that pile can be, the more it burns to full consumption without nuking the soil, and the least amount of smoke that we can put into the area by having it as dry as possible. All of that has to be factored in. So those piles have to cure, and then they get hit the following season and burned in the winter when the climate allows for it. Because it's a multi-phase project, you may see them there, and some burn and some get rebuilt. So that's going to be happening all over our district.
And I have another question. I have a neighbor who's very ill and could not evacuate. Is there a list of those people, of people who would need assistance evacuating, or something?
So we don't have a specific list, but we do have something called Smart 911. It's not associated with Lookout Alert, but it is a profile for your home. You can go in there and register for that. If you can help the neighbor do that, or if she has family, he or she has family, you can go in there. They can put in medical problems, name, phone number, next of kin, pets, what kind of cars they drive. There's so much detail that you can put in there. When that person calls 911, all of the information pops up. It's Smart 911.
Is that on a website or somewhere?
It is, the information is on jeffcom911.org. The Lookout Alert link is on there as well.
We got the pre-evac alert from Elephant Butte, is that what it was called?
Yes.
And we live on the Brook Forest side. And it was a great trial run. And we have a good list, but I'll come to your workshop because it definitely needs to be fine-tuned. But from what I'm hearing you say is, if we have the capability and we get a pre-evac alert and we have everything pulled together and propane turned off, that sort of thing, should we go ahead and throw the cats in the camping van and get the heck out of there? Yes. Yeah. See, we just sat around and it's like, yeah, then you're waiting on your cell phone to be updated and,
You know, it is, you know, we are stressing, here's the reality. We've packed 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. We have put far too many people at the end of our roads into our communities where topography is always going to be a challenge. The reality is our roads cannot be built out anymore. So that is where that get out early. To go back to what Brian said about sheltering in place, I cannot stress enough that that is the absolute last resort. Snowstorms light every snowflake on fire. That is not a pleasant environment to shelter in place in. That is not a risk you want to take. I can promise you. When these fires move through communities, it looks like a war zone. That's not a gamble you want to take. Doing your defensible space in your home hardening reduces your risk, increases your advantage of your property surviving, and at the absolute worst case scenario, if your life is in danger by evacuating, that gives you the opportunity that shelter in place might help you survive. So yes, getting out and getting out early, cannot stress it enough.
Evacuation planning workshop open.
The evacuation planning workshop, what is involved with that? Is there, maybe the questions we may have would be answered then?
Yes, so a little different than a traditional presentation, the evacuation planning workshop, we're going to have stations set up that we're going to go through some of these pieces, such as what does your evacuation checklist look like? What does your go bag have in it? How, if you see smoke and you call 911, you are our eyes at that point, and so helping you to determine how best you can transfer that information to 911 to tell them, I see smoke and I see it on the west side of Elephant Butte, like helping you kind of walk through that process. So there are going to be stations set up to go through all these various different aspects. What, you know, the tips and the tricks, knowing how, you know, keep during the summer, well, frankly, year round, because that's where our fire seasons become, keeping your gas tank full. You know, I mean, we've all been there, right? You coast home on fumes. That's frankly an irresponsible thing to do. So having stations set up to go through those processes.
I have 3 ways to gas. How do I know which way to gas?
Again, some of that's going to come down to situational awareness. Some of it's going to come down to your due diligence of having your alerts and everything notified, knowing that you've got your social media, your news stations, so that you can potentially see where the fire is. Some of that's going to come from DEFCON 911 as well.
Right here.
Thank you again for all of you for being here, first of all, and I really, really appreciate that. But through other organizations in the Evergreen Grapevine, I've heard about a UV red light detection system or something like that that the county is looking at purchasing. And I wanted to see, is that something that anybody can speak to, an impact that might have, or how they might be doing it, or how soon it could be implemented?
So, as you might imagine, technology is changing rapidly. And with all of the fires that are occurring across the West, there's a lot of investments being made. So, there's some things that are in place already that are helping us with early detection of wildfires. There's things that we're doing in partnership with utility companies. So there's one effort called Pano AI. So some of the power companies, both Excel and Core Electric, have cameras stationed throughout the landscape out there. I got an alert this afternoon on my phone. It shows a video image of a smoke. It shows me a map. It triangulates where that smoke is. It turned out it was the U.S. Forest Service burning up north. It was one of their prescribed fires. But it was a little wisp of smoke, so it detected it really early. So that's one piece of technology that exists. There's another form of technology that our emergency manager, Nate, has been testing out, and actually last Friday on that same prescribed fire that occurred up north, we set up a number of monitors around it, and that has a combination of air quality detection components as well as infrared detection components. And so it can not only detect changes in air quality from smoke, but even chemical signatures. So it's something that can be used even for a hazmat incident. And so we are evaluating technology like that, and whether or not it would be appropriate to acquire these monitors in a grid-like fashion across the county lands to help us with early detection. You know, there's a number of other things like the state Department of Fire Prevention and Control. They have aircraft that have amazing technology, everything from infrared to really super sensitive cameras. They can pick up things, and so when we get a lightning storm that might move through an area, the state will launch that aircraft and do recon flights, and if they detect anything, then that starts a notification process. So lots of technology coming online, some of which is in the evaluation process, some of it's already being deployed. Not all of it's being sponsored by the county. Some of it is, again, utility companies, right? They have a vested interest, so lots of things are.
Thank you all for coming. I've learned a lot. I won't be calling you on the day of fire. I have two questions. At my age, I'm not really that familiar with social media. I use it, but what I really would like is a list. You people are intimately familiar with the websites and social media, and I would like a list probably somewhere that we, the citizens, have a reference to what numbers we can use and under what conditions so that we can get our information. You're giving it to me over and expecting me to remember it. It doesn't work for me. And the other thing is, with the two recent accidents on I-70, it closed the road, and particularly one day, the fuel truck, closer for the day. I hope in your discussions, you cannot, in an evacuation, have that highway closed. You have to either plow it off the road, get a helicopter in there and get rid of it. You don't want to be closing roads if people are trying to evacuate. That's my personal opinion. Thank you.
I will, to address the list of resources, I'm going to plug Rotary Wildfire Ready's app and their website. They have those lists on there. We also have them on our website as well. And those are all, it's all on the back of that agenda.
Is this all new?
What's that?
I have this.
Yeah, so the EFR Wildland website QR code, our information is there. And then there's also the same information you can find on Rotary Wildfire Ready.
Okay, it's like 9/11. You said 9/11, whatever it was that you said. I don't believe it's on this. Is not on this. I don't even know the name for it. But anyway, so what I'm asking for is if you guys can look at it up and say, okay, these are the numbers. This is where you can get information. Just in case I'm not looking all over the place for it, especially with day of evacuation. Thank you.
Kind of a different question. Has anybody ever had or heard of looters coming into your neighborhood when there's an evacuation process? Because it happened to me. We had a hard time getting out, and my wife was going out, and I was going to follow her with just some basic stuff, pet, some other things. And I noticed I know every vehicle in our neighborhood. And these two trucks were coming in, no license plate, okay? These two trucks were coming in, we live at the end of the road. So out of it, adrenaline hit me, right? No fires around, but we should have gotten out. So I go back, and these guys are trying to get in my front door. And I think that, you tell me, but that's got to be a big problem with looting. So what do?
I'll take that one. I can't answer the question as far as whether, big problem. I can tell you obviously it is a problem. Clearly it also happened to you. Also, if something like that's happening, call us. Because our guys love nothing more than to catch crooks in the act. So that's what they live for. So call us and we'll get up there and we'll deal with that. Be good to your neighbors and call. If you guys see something weird, let us know. We're going to do the best we can at those checkpoints to make sure that only the people who belong there are the ones that are going on, if they're allowed. But with that said, let us know if you see something weird and we'll send our folks up there to check it out.
Hi, this is just based on one of the earlier questions about the Boulder and Laramie County alert systems. I'm relatively new to the area. I've never been fortunate to not get in this situation. So when we get an alert, are we not given an evacuation route? Like how are we, like we know we're ready to go, or we're in our cars, how do we know where we're going?
So in one of the slides that I had, we talked about pre-evacuation versus evacuation, right? And so as an incident is developing, the commanders on the scene are assessing what the threat is, where the threat is, and they may ask JEFCON to push out a pre-evacuation notice. And so in that case, if you're in that area that's under pre-evacuation, you're going to get a notification that essentially is your trigger to start getting ready, to be on alert and to be ready to go at a minute's notice in case the fire starts to impact you. Once we think that fire has moved from a pre-evacuation that the threat has heightened, then you will get a second notice that says evacuate now. So that's how the notification goes out, and that's the kind of the meaning behind them. But as Jess talked about, if you get a pre-evacuation notice and you see the smoke, or you smell the smoke, or you're in one of those end of the roads with only one road to get in and out, and you don't feel safe, you don't have to wait for that evacuation notice. Get out, because it's not only going to put you in the most safe situation possible, but it's also going to relieve traffic congestion when we do push out the evacuation notice, and all those people that were waiting for that notice are all hitting the road at the same time, and then they become stuck in traffic because it's a narrow roadway or whatnot. So it's both a formal system to give you a heads up and alert, as well as pull the trigger, get out now, as well as you and your personal responsibility and your comfort level to decide, I got a pre-evac, I'm ready to go, I'm just going to leave now and be done with it.
So thank you for that. And yes, I would definitely, as soon as there's any hint, get my family out as quickly as possible. But it sounds like these fires can be very unpredictable. So in that scenario where we don't have the luxury of, okay, we think might be, an issue, this is a pre-evacuation notice, I'm assuming there could be the scenario of, this fire was unpredictable, we're going straight to evacuation.
Correct.
How do we know where to go?
I get that. So it's always our intent to have an evacuation shelter set up before we initiate evacuations. For this exact scenario you're talking about, where we don't have time to pre-evac, most of the time we may not have time to designate an exact evacuation shelter. Our intent when we can do this is to use schools and other facilities with agreements we've got throughout Jefferson County and Cricket County that are already in place. So the best case scenario, we've already notified those locations and we've called in the volunteers and the people that are going to set up the shelters, and we can put that in the alert that you receive for evacuation. But that's perfect scenario. Case scenario. In reality, on some of these wildfires, we've done evacuations where we go from, we get called to the fire to we're calling for evacuations within a very short period of time. We don't have a way to do that. That's where we ask you as individual in the group, have a backup plan. If I'm going to evacuate and there isn't a shelter available, where do I think I want to go? What are my options? Because sometimes we won't have the ability to set those up until after We've initiated several evacuations before we even get to that stage because we're getting personnel up. We have an I-70 issue, whatever it could be within the community, trying to get people in set up shelters. So what we ask you to do is always have a primary plan that says if there's no shelters available, I'm going here, here, here. Whether it's family, it's friends, anything you want to pick.
That's not a good question.
So at the most fundamental level, I would say you want to go away from the smoke, right? If you give an evacuation notice, you're going to see the fire. You're going to see the smoke coming. So where do you go? How do you get out? You want to go away from it. You can watch the direction that the smoke is burning, is moving in. You want to go in the opposite direction. Is that more?
If I can,
Yes.
to make it simple, when you get the 911 callback, right, you get your lookout alert, part of that message is going to say, this is where the threat is. This isn't specific to a fire. This is to any threat. They're going to say, stay out of this 100 block of whatever you're at, because there's a police activity. In terms of a fire, there's a fire going on in this location. This is going to kind of go back to that personal responsibility. Do you know how to get out of your neighborhood? Do you know your area? So if you know that the fire's on the top of Bluebell, do you know how to get out? That's what you're looking for. So that's that awareness, that's that prep part here. How many people go home the same way every single day? Most of us, right? Take a right instead of taking a left. Do you know how to get out? Talked on it earlier, doing the Bluebell fire and everybody going the same way. We can't hurt that many cats. If you know the neighborhood, take the right, go over Shadow Mountain, and yeah, you'll be sitting in Starbucks going down a lot around part of that mess. So know your neighborhood. The threat part of it coming out from the lookout alert's going to say, here's where the threat is. Know where that's at. Pull out maps. Anybody use a map? Because if your phone ain't working and you didn't download your map, you know where to go. So it's basically that simple. We'll let you know where the threat's at. You just need to know how to get out of there. And if in doubt, to the gentleman back here asking about the phone numbers, 911, if it's a life emergency, priorities of life, call 911. We'll tell you where to go. I love telling people where to go, because they always tell me. The non-emergency number for JeffCom, for Jefferson Incorporated, Jefferson County, 303-277-0211. That's the non-emergency number when you got time. So, 303-277-0211. And I know it's also 271-0211, but I'll just give you that one. So yeah, those are really the two numbers you need. But like I say, know your neighborhood, so know when it says this is where the threat's at, and just know which way to go.
With that, I have a question. You said, does anybody use mapping? So one of my questions is, do you have any suggestion, I'm newer to the area the last few years, of a good map of our area?
Realtors have the best maps, and if your phone's not working, go to your local realtor and get a map and put it in your glove box. You'll always have a map of the area, and they're great maps.
Yes, this is a quick comment. If cell phone works, you have a map. Yes, it shows you what it's tracking. You know what it is. And and with that, Google Maps is great. Waze, all the other different mappings that's out there. If you put in the location that says, I want to go to this evac center, that's where they told me. Yeah, it'll tell you how to get there, and that might put you right in the middle of the fire. Be aware, to have that situational awareness, make sure you're looking and you know where that threat's at.
Okay, Bonnie?
Yeah, I have two questions. One is a notification question. So in that period of high winds, we didn't have electricity for about, I don't know, over 24 hours, and we didn't have any cell service. Is there any way we could have known that a fire might be coming? Are there other non-electricity, internet, cell ways of notification?
So if you don't have access to the internet, Wi-Fi, or cell service, your cell phone should still work in emergency mode. If you have to, call 911. We can give you the information if there's anything in your area.
And from the sheriff's side, it's going around and knock on doors from the people. But keep in mind, it's kind of like, we can't tell you where to go, because that message, that lookout
this is really just a fire prevention question. Maybe it doesn't pertain, but I hike up around the Cub Creek area and I see fire circles and charred wood. And I don't know if that's illegal or if there's educational efforts to, tell people not a great place to have a pit fire in the middle of a national forest. And I really see these, fires and charred wood up there, and it's nerve-wracking.
So depending on where it's at up there are burn piles up there. So I don't know if they're burn or they're recreation. They're fire rings. They're fire rings. Ed is here.
So up in the Cub Creek area, we're at the camping situation and all that. We just hired 4 prevention techs. So they'll be on patrol with tank trucks this summer, and we'll get them down there. And that's also covered by the Pike National Forest. And we also will be doing about 30 acres of powdering there this winter.
Yeah, I guess just a request. Having lived through Sonoma County fires for 4 years, 4 evacuations, I know what the go bag is all about. And I'm not saying, tell you how to do your job, but if the pre-evacuations could come well in advance, that would be super, right? Because we were able to split 5 days ahead of time. But even at that point, it was nothing but gridlock for 5 days, even before official evacuation. So, if you can, the more proactive, the more awesome.
Yeah, I would say that's always going to be our goal, right? So if we do have a fire on the landscape, we're going to have the appropriate incident commanders, the law enforcement, folks that are assessing what the threat is, where the threat's moving. We are always going to pull the trigger on pre-evacuation notices sooner rather than later. We would rather err on the side of caution than catch people unprepared. So that is always our goal, but obviously fires being fires, and sometimes they can start and then they're off to the races. So being prepared for either scenario is obviously the best way to approach it, but that is certainly our goal.
A big part of it too that, again, I'm going to ask and request of everyone here. You're here because you care about this. You're concerned. Is your neighbor here? Is the guy across the street here? I need your help to get more butts in the seats so that we can get this message out. Because the reality is that
15% right now.
Yeah, 15% are signed up. We have our ambassador program through Evergreen Fire Rescue. It's a volunteer-based program that has neighborhood volunteers within all 26 plan units of our fire district. They need your help. We all need your help to help us get this word out. Because I'll tell you, even in Tahoe, when Caldor hit with 10 days notice, it was still gridlocked. And they've been through it before, and they knew it was coming. Because there are a lot of people who are not planning and are still going to wait until that very last minute, and they're going to cause that gridlock. The more voices I have in this community helping us do our jobs is going to make it easier for everyone to get out of here safely.
I want to add to that too. Just because we're sending out pre-evacuation notices and evac notices, you guys don't have to wait for us. You are free. If you guys, it's in the news, you're watching it, you know there's a fire out there, you do not have to wait for us to give you that evac order. You can definitely make your own, your own decision and just leave and kind of be ahead of that. So just keep that in mind. Don't always sit around waiting for the phone ring.
Pre-evacuation and a scenario, maybe I'm at Home Depot and I have to go up the park, I want to go back to the house to get my stuff. Pre-evacuation, can you get that thing when I
But typically on pre-evac, during evac, people can still come and go. It's just a pre-evac giving everybody advance notice so they can get all their things together and be ready.
Can I say something on that? So one of the challenges with our engines is getting our engines to the fire. So if you got traffic going back and forth on the roads, that's going to be tough for our fire trucks to get in. So I think once you're out of there, it might be good to stay out for a while so we can start to get our engine in place. That's some of the challenges we have. Trying to get first responders to the actual incident because so many people are coming out. I'll give you an example. When East Troublesome did a stick run, they actually opened that highway both directions. Traffic was coming, we couldn't even get in there to Grand Lake that night. So once you get out, I would probably stay out so we can get our engines in. That's my recommendation.
So I want to thank all of you guys. Sheriff, you've put such a great team together. Thank you. I mean, you really know that and just so appreciate it. My question, and you guys mentioned doing tabletop drills that you're starting to do. During the fire in Grand County, the East Troublesome fire, it was towards the evening, things were going on that were kind of crazy. I know if a fast-moving fire, high wind event happens, we could jam our roadways big time. There have been lessons learned that have happened from other big fires in looking at how you work with like CDOT or whoever to make sure that people can flow out onto the major corridors like 285 and I-70. Is that part of the tabletop drills to slow down traffic upstream so that the evacuation can continue out of our roadways? And the reason I'm asking that, there were lessons, there are grand jury investigations of fires where they showed during evacuation of fires, things locked up when they were merging into other big roadways. And I just really like to know kind of what is being thought about for that.
Sure. Once we get resources in place, we're definitely going to try to mitigate the flow of traffic that are in those arteries that you're using to get away. So yes, once we have resources available to block off and slow things down for those roads, we will do that. That'll all be part of the larger plan.
You mean like on I-70 and 285? Because that's the concern when they talk about these big fire events. It's jammed on these local roadways, but as they try to merge onto the bigger roadways, it can be a real problem.
So the answer is yes. In reality, we are looking at those, and we're looking at the different traffic models and how they're impacted from an evacuation standpoint. We have a full-scale exercise coming up. Steph's not here to tell me the date, but it's coming up in September, where we're actually going to physically evacuate a section of the community to test those theories that we've looked at on computer models and simulation models and everything else. So we are actually going to evacuate people here, I believe, to this school so that we can see if what we're assuming in the modeling programs is actually going to be true in a real-world event as best we can in an exercise scenario. Then we're able to take that information back and see where did we have the flaws, where did we have the misconceptions so that we can adapt the modeling to work better through that. Because then what we can ultimately do is even before the rest of the law enforcement units come on scene, we know where we need to put these traffic control points to eliminate those pinch points on the evacuation routes out. To the gentleman's comment about closing I-70, I couldn't agree with you more. That's where the coordination does come into place, especially through our Emergency Operations Center, where we do have a complete section in transportation that is Jefferson County Road and Bridge, is CDOT, is all of these things, but we're also now bringing in the CDOT Transportation Technology Center where they're watching the traffic flows and the patterns and the congestion. So if we need to send a resource up there to get it flowing again, we're seeing in real time where that comes in. They do it every day. We took that same practical application that we saw for ski season and everything else over the winter. They do it all the time to decompress I-70. So we're taking that same application and putting it at these types of levels as well.
Thank you. And fix yourself up ahead of the Jefferson County Emergency Manager.
Make the motion to Jefferson County Emergency Manager.
I just want to give a shout out to Keenan for coming to our home. We lost our home in the Marshall Fire. We had 10 minutes to evacuate. The roads were totally blocked. We had to make a decision to U-turn and get out of the way. We thought we were leaving for smoke, so Keenan came to our home and he did an assessment. He did such a wonderful job. I just wanted to thank him. And I hope maybe we're all the 15% already here, but we try to get other folks to sign on or to, want to have the assessment. But there is some meet resistance about people just sort of saying, that they don't think it's needed. And some of the things he told us were just simple. And even having lived through it, we didn't even think about it. So now we have an opportunity to think about it. So I just wanted to say thanks to Keenan and encourage everybody, if they haven't already, to go ahead and have that assessment because it's needed.
I'm not sure if Keenan asked you to say that, but I acknowledge that. If you haven't lived through it, it will change you. And that's why this is so important. I've lived through it, you've lived through it. There's a number of folks in our community that have, in fact, lived through it. And it will change you. It will change our community. I've spoken to it recently that if a major event happens here, it's not just homes that might burn. It's not just trees that might burn. The schools change. There are kids that are no longer going to school there because their families no longer have a place to live in this community. It changes everything, and that's why the work that we're asking of every individual who has chosen to live here is so utterly important. We need you to do the work to help us help you, because it's, again, and I work feverishly because I've lived through it and I don't want to ever live through it again. And you can speak to that firsthand. It's not something you ever want to live through. So the more due diligence you can do, not only on your own property, but also in helping us help your neighbors. Again, Carrie and Keenan have their iPads here. If you have not had a home assessment done, sign up before you leave tonight. Take the QR code and hand it to your neighbor and get them to sign up. Because quite frankly, their property matters to your property too. So we have to get more people on board with doing the work that needs to be done, because in our community, it literally will come down to life-saving situations.
Can I just add, and thank you so much for recognizing the work we've done, but we are very far from being done. We have beefed this up. Pretty proud of these guys in here that have come on board with us. But we're at baby cow beef right now. But I'm going to tell you guys, the passions, I was born and raised in Louisville. So I have family and friends that lost everything too. So obviously that's a passion and we're going to learn from that. But having been with the Sheriff's Department and working on behalf of you guys as this community for over 38 years, that is my passion, along with all of these people sitting up here. But none of this is easy. That's our problem. None of it is cheap. So I want to make sure you guys realize the things that we have to do to be able to accomplish this. And XL Energy was very good to me when we took office last year and came in and did an assessment. Surprisingly, to a lot of people, we paid bills just like you guys do. We still have to pay electric, we still have to pay water. We were able to save $50,000 in 2023 on top of the fact that they raised prices. That $50,000 that we put the efforts through with XL Energy allows us to take that money and redirect it to things like this, to that equipment that Brian was talking about, because none of it is free. And so we are doing our due diligence to be as fiscally responsible as we can. Forest Service talking about getting 4 extra people. People are not wanting to do this work anymore. So even if we get the funds to pull in more people, we're having issues with recruiting them. And so we need to be able to speak of what we're doing, the pride in it, and the fact that we need people. The younger generations are not volunteering. Our incident management team works primarily 95% volunteers. And we are fortunate that we have them, but we need more. Okay, and then the finances are always going to be something that we're going to be coming to you guys to discuss. We have saved money in every avenue possible since we took office so that we can redirect that money to the things that are necessary and that are needed, such as this fire mitigation. So I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of that also. You know, if I could have 5 times the people working in this unit that I have, I'd do it in a heartbeat. But we have to make sure that we are taking that money and using it as effectively as possible also. But I wanted to make sure that I was able to tell you guys that. So yes, we have beefed this up, but we're at baby cow status. So thank you for recognizing that. But these people are here for you, and they'll answer any questions moving forward.
Thank you, Sheriff. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. It is 10 after 8. As the Sheriff just said, and we mentioned already before, we're staying here. There are agency folks all over the place up here. If you have additional questions, you know, please feel free to grab whoever of us that you think the question is pertinent to. But I, again, want to stress and thank everyone for showing your interest in this difficult topic and being here. And again, hoping to help that you do your due diligence as well as go out and spread the word. Again, it comes back to I need you to help us so we can help you. Thank you again so much.